Hello and welcome to Discover Dorico. So in this session, it's April 2022. In this session we're going to go through the Dorico First Steps Guide, which was put together by one of my colleagues, Lily, who also does the Dorico documentation. It's a really fantastic guide in how you do lots of the basic stuff, how you first get to grips with Dorico. So if you already know some of this stuff, why not send a link to this video to your friends and they can have a look at how they get started, answer all the questions, all the basic stuff about how do you do note input and those kind of things. How do you actually get started with a project in Dorico? I'm just going to flick over here to show you if you go to dorico.com/resources, or if you go to the blog.dorico.com and click on the resources menu item, you get to the resources page, and the first item here is the Dorico First Steps Guide. If you click on that, it will take you to this First Steps documentation page where you can find a web help version for this in a few languages. You can find a PDF version, which is what I'll be working from today, and you'll also want to download one of the demo projects from here. So the piano piece resource is the one that we'll be using today. Maybe we'll get onto the blues song resources in another session. So I recommend downloading the PDF if you want to follow along. I'll have it open on my screen here, and also the demo project, so you know what it is we're aiming at. And the piece we're aiming at here is a piece by Dora Pijacevic, and this is one of the pieces that it encapsulates lots of the things that you want to do in a basic project in Dorico. What are the note input type of things you want to do? What are all of those things that you need to do in many projects in Dorico? So I'm going to close this bit. I've got Dorico open, as you can see, and on the right hand side here I've got the First Steps Guide. Now you can see this was for Dorico 3.5. So this guide was originally written and designed around Dorico 3.5, and I'll show you, especially at the beginning, where some of the bits around the Steinberg hub and that kind of thing are a little bit different in Dorico 4, but not so dissimilar that it's a problem. So I'll also have the live chat open here as well. So if there's any questions, then let me know in there. If you've got questions, if you're watching this after the session, so if it's not a live session when you're watching it, then you can always email us. The email address is discoverdorico, which is all one word, @steinberg.de. So we'll get started, and if you want to follow along with this session, press stop at any point if that's, if you need to catch up with something, if you want to investigate something else, and resume it. I'll try and also kind of tell you which page we're on, and as we go through it, so you can follow along with all of the things on there. And then I'll put time links underneath this video once we've finished, so that you can flick backwards and forwards if you want to jump into any of the particular sections. So let's get started. So you can see I've got the First Steps Guide open here. I'll just scroll through a bit. So there's a table of contents of all sorts of things. There are about 100 pages. Don't panic. I think that's possibly one of the things people go, oh my goodness, it's 100 pages. We're not doing all 100 pages today. For a lot of the information we want, actually, we won't need that. It also starts with an introduction to this guide and a tour of the user interface for Dorico. So if you've never used Dorico before and you want to have a look through this, it's got lots of the information in here about how the screen is set up, how the toolbars work, where they are, those kind of things, the tab bar, the toolboxes, the panels, all of those kind of things. It details all of those, and also the functions of the modes. So there are 5 main modes in Dorico. Setup mode that we'll use at the beginning, write mode that we'll use for most of today. There's also engrave mode if you're using Dorico Pro. There's also now in Dorico 4, there's a smaller version of that in Dorico Elements. It's not available in Dorico SE. I think everything we're doing today is also available in Dorico SE. So if you want to follow this guide along and use this in Dorico SE, then yeah, that's no problem. There's also play mode and print mode. Tells you about how Dorico projects work and some bits about the key commands. So we'll be using a fair number of keyboard shortcuts for things because it's a really quick way of entering notes and doing things in Dorico. There are a couple of differences. So on a PC you have control instead of command. On a Mac it will be command. There is a control button on Mac that actually we'll occasionally use today. It tells you things like, depending on how your keyboard is labeled, you might have an option key or an alt key. Option and alt are the same. So we'll use some of those combinations of things. So there's a useful reference there if you need it on page 8, just to tell you, what's going on with the key commands. But the reason this guide is looks like it's a big guide, 100 or so pages, is because there are so many screenshots in it. And as you go through, we'll see all of the screenshots, and it will hold your hand as we go through this, and you'll see exactly all the things that you need to do and see as we go along. I've just noticed in the chat questions about can't get East-West Opus to work correctly in Dorico. I'm not going to be able to look at that in this session, unfortunately. I will answer questions from the live chat probably at the end, so that we can get through this as a learning experience for entering notes and that kind of thing. But as I said, there's an email address if you want to email me or get in touch with support, and then they can help you out with specific cases like that. So let's get started. So it says start a new project. Now, this is, like I said, at the very beginning, where there's a couple of differences between Dorico 3.5 and Dorico 4. Dorico 4 has a slightly different Steinberg hub, which is designed to get you started even quicker. But what I'm going to do is actually not use some of the bits in this hub, so that it's more of a learning experience of where these things are should you need them in the future. So, for example, in the Steinberg hub, in the Create New section, there is this solo section, which includes a solo piano. You could easily start this project using the solo piano template. You can enter the project title and the composer from here. You can enter the time signature and the key signature from here if you want to. Set the paper sizes and all that kind of thing. But just so that it's more of a learning experience for doing lots of these things and understanding how they work and that kind of thing, I'm going to just start with the empty page template, no instruments in it at all, and I'm going to untick the time signature and key signature options so that we can enter those as we go. If you want, put the project title and the composer in, but this guide that we've got open here on the right-hand side will teach you about all of those bits in some of the other pages. So it's designed to teach you where they all work, not just necessarily use the kind of quick getting started hub section here. So I'm going to press Create Project, which will take me to this screen here, which is very, very similar. I'll just make this fit on my screen here. Very, very similar to what you can see on the right-hand side here. There's a very slight difference. If you're eagle-eyed, this one says Create Solo Player, and it now says Add Single Player instead of Solo, and that's because there's a different option for soloists. Anyway, it does the same thing. So we're going to say, it says press Control or Command N to start a new project, and you can also choose File New. And I've got there from the hub by creating this blank project with nothing in it. So a new project hub window opens. That's what this is here. And we're in setup mode, you can see in the top left corner. So we're already on page 10. Add a solo player. So we're now going to add actually what we now call in Dorico 4 a single player. And it says press Shift P. You can also click this button here, which will add a single player. There's also some buttons down here, so you can click this one on the left, or you can do the shortcut that's Shift P. You'll see as I press keys on my keyboard, you'll see them flash up on the screen as well. So if I hold down the Shift key, you'll see it appear. If I hold down the Command key, you'll see that appear. I happen to be using a Mac today. So now if I type the word piano, then and press Enter, then we'll add a piano to this piece here. So it says, so you can choose it from here, click Add, press Return, done that bit. So we've now added a solo piano to this piece. Now, in setup mode here, this guide says that what you might want to do is delete the spare layout. So on the right-hand side here, we have the full score layout and we have the piano layout. Now, it doesn't really mention it in this guide, but there's a couple of different ways you could do this. And in some of the other videos I've done, I've probably said use the piano layout because that's the useful thing you want to do. You don't really want the full score maybe because it has the piano labels in here as staff labels. But if you go to the piano layout here, the part effectively, then it labels piano in the top left corner. It doesn't have staff labels. So instead, you've got other things that you might not want to sort out. I think for lead sheets, we probably did want lead sheet at the top. So when we've done a previous video, we use this part layout. This guide says why not use the full score layout, and as a later part of this guide it will tell you how to change the staff labels and teach you how to do that as well. So optionally, if you want to, you can delete the spare layout. You can just click on this, press delete on your keyboard. There's a little trash can down here. You can delete that layout if you want to, if you don't want it. When we're writing music, we're going to be using popovers. Popovers are these little boxes which appear, which you can then type into and it will enter music at that point. I will tell you how some of the panels or zones work and where you can get some of the items from as well, but we will be using popovers a fair bit. If you're wondering what a popover is, it's this little thing here, and there's a page here that tells you a bit more about those. It also tells you at the beginning, when you're starting this bit of music, about a few other things like the system track and that kind of thing, so I'll make sure we include those. So we now want to add a key signature. So we're in setup mode, we want to go into write mode. These modes at the top, the shortcuts for them are Control 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, or if you're on a Mac, Command 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I press Command 2, then I now have, then I'm now in this mode. So write mode is probably where we're going to spend most of the time today. And then if we read the guide here, it says, so you want to be in write mode, and if you want to zoom in, there are various options if you want to change the zoom or anything else on your screen. There's some options at the bottom, there's some shortcuts to do it, and if you've got a trackpad, you can also pinch and zoom using that. Select this rest at the top of the staff, and we're going to get started with actually inputting some music into here. So it says press, I'm reading down here, so number 2, press Shift K to open the key signatures popover. So now we have this popover open, and then it says enter A flat. I mean, it's actually A, capital A, lowercase b. So I'm going to do that into this popover and press enter, and now I've got 4 flats. So you can enter the lowercase b for a flat, and you can enter the sharp symbol for sharp, and depending on if you're on a Mac or PC, sharp is over on the right hand side of your keyboard near the enter key. On a Mac it's Alt or Option 3 if you want the sharp symbol, and just a lowercase b for flat. So press return, close the popover, we have this. So the result is an A flat major key signature. Brilliant. Page 14, we're flying through this. There's also, it says in this tip, there is a panel over here where you can enter different key signatures. There's a temperament option for much later we get into that. It won't be today. There's major minor key signatures. You can change the number of sharps and flats in here if you want to. So you can use this panel if you want to, but I'm going to do it using popovers and follow this guide today. So now what we want to do is enter the 3/4 that we're going to need for this one. So adding a time signature. So I'm going to, it was already selected over here, but with a rest selected or the key signature, just something at the beginning of the piece selected, it says press Shift M to open the time signatures popover. Why is it M? It's M for meter. So it's the meters popover really. And it says enter 3/4. So literally just 3/4 in the popover. And now we've got 3/4. So now we have a 3/4. There is of course a time signatures or meter zone over here, so you can enter from there as well if you want to. Now we want to add some bars. So we've only got 1 bar by default, but we need 74. So what we're going to do, we still have something selected at the beginning here, so I'm going to do Shift B and I'm going to type 73 so that we have 74 bars total, the one we had initially, and another 74 bars. I've just seen somebody's comment, please do jazz. I think we will at some point, yes. I've been sent a piece that we could probably do at some point, but it won't be today, apologies. So we've now got 74 bars. Now, just to help this process and so that we can see where we're getting, we do have bar numbers at the beginning here. If you've just opened Dorico for the first time ever and not changed anything, you probably also have the system track turned on. It's in view system track. So you've got these little grey bars over here. And when you click on them, they'll kind of go orange. And they're useful for deleting things and adding extra things and doing all sorts of things. We don't need to do all of those today, but they're also useful because it tells you the bar number in every single one. And that's useful because after completing this task, it says using the key signatures popover, input a key signature change to D flat major in bar 33. So you find bar 33, you choose any item, we only have rests, Shift K for key signature, enter uppercase D and lowercase b for flat. If you enter lowercase d, for example, then you'd get a minor, so you'd get just the lowercase d would be D minor, and if it was entered, if you did this, then you'd get a D flat minor, and I want a D flat major, so it's uppercase. And then it says in bar 43, we want to go back to A flat, so Shift K, A flat. Okay, now the double bar lines have appeared automatically because there's a key signature change. I haven't done anything to add those. Now the caret, now this is important, or caret, I guess if you're French, I don't know. It says we want to input some notes. If this orange line, a bit like the flashing line that you have if you're in Word or a word processor, that shows you where you're going to be inputting music. So if that is on, you're inputting music. If it's not on, you're editing things. So I'm going to select to the beginning up here, inputting melody onto the top staff, page 16. It says in bar 1, select the rest on the top staff. I've done that. And press Shift N to start note input. So adding things in Dorico is often shift something. So Shift N is I'm going to enter some notes, and that turns the caret line on. However, quick aside, you can also do it in a few other ways. To turn the caret off, you can press Escape. So you can do Shift N, and you can use Escape. You can also turn it on and off with Enter in most cases. So I can just press the Enter or Return key, and then that will turn the caret line on, and press it again and it will turn it off. And you can use them all interchangeably. So you can turn it on with Enter and off with Escape. You can turn it on with Shift N and you can turn it off with Enter. It doesn't really matter. You can also double click. So if you double click somewhere, it will turn the caret on at that point. So there's a few options. You pick the one that's best. In many cases in Dorico, there might be more than one way of doing things. You pick the workflow that works for you. I actually pick a couple depending on what it is I'm doing. And if you're coming from another notation program, you might use Escape often because you use that in that program as well. So I'm going to click on this rest, and I'm going to press Enter, start the caret line today. It says Shift N. Now we're going to input notes. So the notes over here in our panel on the left-hand side, you may be aware already or you may not. These are the notes that we're going to use for note entry. And now we've mapped them to the numbers across the top of your keyboard. So we're going to use these with numbers. If I hover over this with my mouse, it says quarter note or crotchet equals 6. And if I hover over some of the others, it says this one's 5, 4, 3, 2. We really did write hemi, demi, semiquaver, yes. And that's 2. This one has 3 flags and is also happened to be shortcut 3. So basically, as the notes get longer, the numbers get higher. And as the notes get shorter, the numbers get smaller. So it works quite well. So you can touch type the music just by pressing the numbers on the top of your keyboard and entering the numbers that you need. So this says, to start off with, press 5 to select eighth notes or quavers. And the caret line's still on. Now, we need to press space twice to advance the caret. So we've got quavers or eighth notes selected here. If I press the space bar, then you'll see the caret line moves along. This is the rhythm grid, and at the moment it's showing me the rhythm grid in eighth notes. So at the bottom of the screen down here, you can see this is where I can set the rhythm grid. So I could choose a different option if I wanted to, but by default and on your system it should be set to eighth notes. There's how you change it if you need to. So I've moved, with the space bar, I've moved the caret along by the duration I had selected over here, which was eighth notes. Now let's put some notes in. So if we literally follow this guide, number 5 on page 17 says press F, G, A, B. So literally on your QWERTY keyboard, your normal computer keyboard, press F, G, A, B. And you can see we've also got A flat and B flat has also been entered because we've already got that in the key signature. So I haven't had to specify that I want those because they're already in the key signature. So that makes sense. Next it says press 7. 7 is because that is a half note. So I've pressed 7 on there, and then it says press dot. You can see we're down here. It says dot or period to add a rhythm dot, so that's the full stop dot, which will give you, also lights up over here on the left-hand side to give me a rhythm dot. So I've got this note and a dot. So now when I do the next thing, which is press G, then I'll get a dotted minim or a dotted half note G. And Dorico, it says, has automatically selected the smallest interval away from where we were. So because I was on this B flat and I pressed G, it's done this one. It's gone down this time because that's the closest one. Then it says repeat steps 3 to 7 for bars 3 to 4. So just as a learning experience, it's saying press 5 and do this, and then press this and do this and this. So that's the quick version of how to enter all of those notes. It also says you can repeat things. So next time we do this, I'm going to do it even quicker by repeating sections instead. You might also find that you have a little grey note that's kind of hovers around here when I move my mouse. Now that's because you can use a mouse for note input if you want to. I wouldn't, because it's not as accurate. It's not as quick. You might think it's useful, and maybe occasional cases it is, but to be honest, I myself find it not very quick or accurate to do things. So I press this little arrow key, which means I can edit things, but I don't get that little ghost note. And if you want to turn that off, you can use that little arrow in the top corner there. So now it says, continue inputting notes on the top staff using what you've learned in this task up until the end of bar 8. So you'll need the PDF at this point. So if you haven't got it already, from that first steps page, you can download the PDF, which is this one, of the piece that we're working from. So now what we want to enter is this run here of notes. Up to, it says to do this up to the, let me just check, where are we? Here. Yes, so to do this up to the end of bar 8. So what we're going to do now is, if we continue doing the same thing, we'll press 5, press the space bar to move on one, and then we press F, then we can get from here and we can say G, A, B, C, D, E, and then we change to quarter notes and press F, F, and then we basically do the same again. Now, so I don't need to do the same again. I have this note selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to click on this rest here. So I've selected from here to here, or vice versa. Now if I just press R for repeat, it will literally repeat that music like that straight after the selection I had, which can be a very useful way. When you're making selections of things, you can click on an individual note. If you click between the notes, or between the notes and rests, then you'll select the whole bar. So to select this whole bar and Shift select this whole bar is actually quite quick to do if you need to do that. Or you can select individual notes, as we said. So inputting chords on the bottom staff. So now it says, in bar 1, select the rest on the bottom staff. Here we go. And then press Shift-N, or you can double-click, or you can press Enter. And press Q to start chord input. And if when I do that, you see over here on the left-hand side, I've also got the little chord button lit up. If you want to, you can press that button if you want to use it with the mouse, but Q for chords is a probably quicker way of getting there. And you see there's a little plus now on here. So the little plus means I can now enter chords from my computer keyboard. If you have a MIDI keyboard, you don't need to use this system, but this guide at the moment is teaching you, so how do you do this on your computer? So the next thing is, it says press A to input an A flat. Now we've already got the default note, which is crotchet quarter note selected anyway, so I can just press A for an A flat. And because this is the first pitch, then it might not be the correct one you want. It's actually the closest one to the F clef, of course, that we're currently on. So it's an A flat close to middle C. If you want to do it below, then you can move the note. So although it's not actually in the guide, here's a quick one for you. So if you hold down the Alt key, then you can move a pitch diatonically. And if you want to make that a big jump, i.e. an octave, you hold down the Alt, could be Option, Alt or Option with Command on a Mac, or with Control. So it's Control Alt or Command Alt up and down. It actually is more complicated to say than it is to just do it. So there we go. So you can move octaves very, very easily. Now we're in chord mode, so if I now press E for an E flat, then it'll get that entered as a chord. And because we're now in chord mode, the caret hasn't advanced as it did when we did the top section of music here. So what we now do is press the space bar to advance the caret by the note value that's selected here. As I said, this sounds more complicated than if you just actually do it, you'll kind of go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's just, yeah, I'll make it sound complicated for you. So now I want to enter another note. So we're now on page 19, number 8. Press Shift Option or Shift Alt A, because that will enter an A flat above where we were. And then I can press C and E, and I can enter that as a chord. And then if it says, it's got some other details, then press space to advance the caret, and then all you need to press is A, C, E, and enter that chord again. And you're probably thinking, you could have done that with R for repeat. You're right, I could. So the next bar is very similar, starts with the lower A flat again. So we'll press space to advance the caret. We press Control A on my Mac, or it is actually Control, or if you're on Windows, it's Control Alt A to input that A below, and then press the E, and then advance the caret, and then press B, and then you want to change it to go up an octave. There we go, and then D and E, and then space, and you want B, D, and E again. And then it says repeat steps 4 to 17 to input bars 3 and 4. Let's not do that. Let's press enter to turn the caret line off. Let's select this one here and this one here. If you want to go over chord input, great. It'd be a really good task to do. If you're doing this for speed, select these 2 bars and press R, and then you now have them repeated, and that's what's in this tip here. So we now have all the chords required for the first 4 bars for the bottom staff. So after doing this, it says, now continue inputting chords on the bottom staff up until beat 1 in bar 6, as accidentals are required on beat 2. So what I'm going to do is, I'm now going to use a MIDI keyboard just because it's going to speed things up just for a second. So I'm going to do the same, turning the caret line on. I'm going to press Q to turn the chord mode off, because I don't need chord mode, because I'm just going to do this from a MIDI keyboard instead. I'm referencing the PDF over here. I can choose 6 for quarter notes, as I did before. And what I'm going to do now is just on my MIDI keyboard, I'm going to press the chords that I want to enter at this point. Oh, fat fingers. This is the kind of thing that happens when you try and do things live, of course. And here we go. Did it say, I think it said, actually, it said to do to bar 6, didn't it? So I've already gone too far. Let me just back up a minute, because I've entered the wrong chords and the wrong notes. Here we go. Right, so let's do this again. So bar 5, I should pay attention. Bar 5 is this. And then it says do the first one in bar 6, because then we want to teach you the next section about entering accidentals. I've also just noticed there's a question about entering microtone. There's another session on microtone. Have a look on our YouTube channel for microtones, but yes, there's another whole session on that one. So now we want to enter accidentals. So we got to this point. It says in bar 6, select the quarter note rest on beat 2 on the bottom staff, press Shift N to start note input, which is where I am. Hooray! If chord input is not already active, press Q. I have pressed Q. The F at the bottom of the chord does not need an accidental, but following on from those, they do. So what we're going to do is press Shift Option F, or you can use a MIDI keyboard. And then to the next 2, you need to enter some accidentals. So accidentals are over here. We have here a natural, a flat, and a sharp. And you're thinking, why are those shortcuts? If you have a look at your keyboard, the number 0 on the top of your keyboard is natural, and the flat, the key to the right of it, is a minus, hyphen, and the key to the right of that says equals, but actually has a sharp on it, doesn't it? So that's what you need to kind of think of. So you've got natural, flat, and sharp. So what we're going to do now is press, because we're in a flat key and we want some accidental naturals, you press 0, and that will light up the natural option. And then you press B, which will enter a B natural. And then, because the accidentals only apply to one note, you then press 0 again, and then you can press D, and you'll get a D natural. And then press space to advance the caret, and then you can just literally press F, B, D. The reason being, we've already entered the naturals in this bar, so Dorico is going to continue with those same accidentals. So I don't need to enter the naturals again. It's going to already know what they are. So it tells you a bit more about those. It also tells you about key signatures, tonality systems. So for the person who just asked the question, there's a couple of different tonality system options here, and you can create your own. We don't have time for that today, unfortunately. Like I said, there's another session. I think we created 19 EDO in another session, so have a look for that on our YouTube channel. So now continue inputting chords on the bottom staff using what you've learned in the previous task up till the first beat of bar 14. So for the next bit, so from bar 7 over here, I'll speed ahead for a second and use my MIDI keyboard and enter the chords this way. I need to pay attention while I'm doing this. Bear with me. Which one was bar 14, Lily? This one. So the last chord is like that. So I've used the MIDI keyboard, so what I'm doing there is I've got the caret line on, I'd selected the note value, all the notes were the same length, and I could just play the chords on my MIDI keyboard. It's just another way of entering notes, and a very useful and quick way it is too. So now we're going to add another voice to the top staff. So in bar 9, here, select the rest on the top staff, like this. Press Shift N to start note input, or enter, or double click. And So beside the caret, there's a note symbol. So that's this little note here. So let's have a look at what this does. So this indicates the voice. So normally you're using, Dorico just has one voice, one rhythm on that staff, which is we call an upstem voice. Now, yes, in this bar here, because the notes are at the top of the staff, it's a downstem voice. But as soon as you start adding another voice, those stems would flick up to go upstem, and the second voice would be downstem to sit underneath them. So that's what we're going to create at this point. So if chord input is active, press Q to stop chord input. It's not in my case because of the way I've just entered those other notes. Press Shift V to create a new voice. Now you only need to do this once, really. You press Shift V once and it says plus downstem. So now I've added an extra voice. So now I can enter notes in that extra downstem voice. So it says here on page 23, number 5, press 7 to select half notes and then period, full stop to select the rhythm dot, and then press B to enter a B flat. So now we have a B flat in the new downstem voice. And Dorico will show you a cautionary because we've got some B naturals down here, which means I'm doing it right so far. Now press the left arrow so the caret's positioned at the start of the beat in bar 9. Why would you do that? Okay, so when you use the arrow keys in Dorico, just literally left and right, it's moving along this rhythm grid. This is the rhythm grid that I said was set down here in the bottom corner. Down here, you can choose the resolution of your rhythm grid. Currently set to 8th notes, so when I move left and right, it's just moving by 8th notes. Okay, so we want to be on the second beat in bar 9 here. And then just press V to switch to the upstem voice. So if I just press V, you see this it switches to upstem. Press V, switches to downstem. So I don't need to create any more voices. I have 2 voices on this staff. I can just press V to toggle between them. So I want to be in the upstem voice, and V will toggle between those. Press 5 to enter some 8th notes, and press E, G, F, E to input those pitches in the upstem voice. And you see it's automatically now sorting out the stem directions. Then press 7 dot to enter the dotted half note. Press Q to start chord input, and press, in my case, Control A, the Windows shortcut is here, and then press D, so I now have entered a chord. I could have done it on a MIDI keyboard. I'm using the QWERTY keyboard. So now, at the start of bar 11 here, press V, you can switch to the downstem voice, and then you can repeat the steps to enter the same thing again. Just for speed, if we, let's actually do it because it's a good learning experience. So we'll do this, and we'll press B for B flat, and then from here we'll press V to switch to the upstem voice, and we'll switch to 5 for quavers or 8th notes, and, oh, wrong octave. Oh, I'm in chord mode. Press undo. Undo is Control Z, as in many, many applications. So turn chord mode off with Q if you're, unless you're daft like me. There we go. So now I've entered those to input bars 11 and 12 as well. Is it? Let me check my reference. Yeah, it is. I could have used R, couldn't I? And could have repeated them. But anyway, we'll do it this way. So we'll enter. What do we want here? We wanted an A and D. There we go. So we've now done a couple of different methods of inputting those. Yes, you can use repeat, which is obviously a far quicker way of entering these notes. And now we're going to be adding slurs. So I'm going to press Enter or Escape to turn the caret line off. It says in bar 1, click anywhere on the 8th note beam. Now if you click a note head, it selects the note head. If you click the beam or the stem, then here you see for stems you can select whole chords, and on the beam you can select all the notes under the beam, which is a much quicker way of selecting all of those. So now to add a slur on all of those, just press S. There's also a button if you want it over here on the left hand side, but I'm just going to press S, which is going to do that for me. So I'm now going to do that the same here. I think it says repeat this for each phrase that requires a slur up to the end of bar 8. So that one does. Now this next phrase does, but I need to select this note, and then I need to hold down Shift and select this note. So now it's selected all the way up to here, and press S. I can also click on this beam and then Shift select this bar here, this note here, and press S, and I can add a slur to those as well. So that one is probably going to need a slur because it's similar, except it isn't similar to this one because there's these notes underneath. So to add a slur for this one, we're now down here. In bar 9, select the downstem note, And I'll just show you what happens and why the guide is telling you to do it this way. If I select from here and use Shift and press S, then it's going to add a slur from this note until the next thing in this voice, which is down here, because they're different voices, and it's going to add a slur here for the top voice. Is Dorico trying to be useful? In this case, it's not what we wanted. So press undo. If you select this note, and then Control or Command select this note here, even though they're in different voices, if I press S, then we can slur between them, which is much more useful. So I'm going to select that one, and then it says repeat this for the slurs in 11 to 13. I'm just checking my reference PDF. Where am I? And I haven't entered bar 13 yet. I've missed a step, haven't I? I've missed bar 13. So I'm going to put the notes in bar 13 first, because that's going to help me. So these notes here, now you can copy and paste with Control-C, Control-V, but actually slightly quicker, and also in another notation program, is if I select these notes and hold down the Alt or Option key and click at the beginning of this bar here, then I can copy the notes that way as well. And that also works for many other items, so I'll use that for some other items in a minute. Anyway, select this note, Command, select this note and press S. And bar 13 has a slightly different one, so yeah, we can do that one later if we need to. Now, if you need to flip slurs in Dorico Pro and actually in Dorico 4 in Dorico Elements, you can flip slurs with F, but you can also in engraved mode tweak how these slurs look exactly. So if you've downloaded the PDF and you want the slurs to be above, don't worry, that's much later in this guide, but for now, just don't worry about it. So now what we're going to do is carry on from here. So we're on page 26, and we're going to select the rest in bar 14 on the top staff, which is here. And so we've entered slurs by selecting some notes and then adding a slur, but you can also do it during note input. So I'm going to press Shift-N, and it says, if the note symbol beside the caret is downstem, it is. It's like Lily knows, and it knows what you're about to do. Press V and it will flip it to the upstem voice. If chord input is active, press Q. It's not in my case, but it might be in yours, so be careful. Press 5 to select eighth notes. Press S to start a slur. Input the notes under the first slur, because there's no slur yet, because there's no notes. So what we're going to do now is input these notes. Now you can do it, if you want to, from the computer keyboard or a QWERTY keyboard, or a MIDI keyboard, doesn't matter. I'm just going to do a MIDI keyboard just for speed. Where did I get to? I think I've got to about here. Oh, that means I've just entered the wrong. Let me just check. I've done it whilst talking, which means I've probably not entered enough notes. Yes, I haven't. I need another 2 notes. There we go. And you can see the slur has entered for all of those notes. So now, to stop the slur, it now says here, in point 15, press Shift-S. So that will now stop the slur, and you can see the little slur light went off over here. So now what we want to do is press F to input the next note, and then press S to start another slur, and then enter the other notes. So we want G, A, B, C, like this. Then it says press 7 to select half notes, and the dot for a dotted half note, and press G. So now the slur goes over those notes. So now press Shift-S. You see this little light is on? Shift-S. The light goes off, and press Escape or Return to stop note input. So now you've entered slurs after you've entered the notes and while you've been entering the notes. So there's a couple of different options there for how you do it. So now it says, after completing this task, copy the music on both staves in bar 3 and 4 into bars 19 and 20, because that's going to be much quicker. Inputting ties. Now, ties in Dorico, they're actually, it's a way of just entering, one note in a much quicker way, or multiple notes in a much quicker way. So press Shift-N to start note input. If chord input is not already active, press Q. I have pressed Q. Press 7 to select half notes. So we're actually going to enter a half note at this point, even though we're in 3/4. And press D, and you get a half note but tied into the next bar. So you don't need to say quarter note and enter another one, no, that kind of thing. This is just one note in Dorico, and depending on where it lives in the bar will depend how that note displays, but it's a much quicker way of doing it. So now we actually want this one to be up here. Then it says press 6 to select quarter notes, and press F. Then press the space to advance the caret, and press the minus because you want this to be an F flat, and then press F again. So there we go. So now we've got one with a tie and 2 notes that aren't tied, and press escape or return to do that. If you want to use ties, you can also press T for tie. There's a little button down here on the left hand side for ties. There's also some scissors underneath, and the shortcut is U, so if you want to split ties you can do that. There's also clever ways of adding the caret line and then splitting a tie at any point during its duration. So if you've got long held notes, you can start the caret somewhere, press U, and it will split the tie at that point and not just everywhere. There's lots of other useful things. So follow our Tips Tuesday videos if you would like lots of other useful hints and tips for things like that. Now for adding dynamics. So in bar 1, so scroll back up here. In bar 1, select the quarter note rest on the treble clef. Press Shift D. So Shift is entering, adding something. Shift D for dynamics. We have a dynamics popover. Enter MP into the popover, and then press return. So now we have the MP dynamic. Now you can also enter hairpins. So it says in bar 5, click on the G in the top staff and press the note. It's the if you look on your keyboard for the greater than, less than, they're above the comma and full stop. So what you actually want to do is press Shift comma, and it will enter a hairpin because it looks like a hairpin. But now you want this to be longer. So there's a shortcut for lengthening and shortening things in Dorico, which is used for all sorts of things. Note lengths, you can change the note length with this, you can change the dynamic with this, we're going to change a repeat length with this later. So it's Shift Option or Shift Alt and the right arrow. So I'm going to hold those 2 keys down, and when I press the right arrow, this note's going to get longer. And if I press the left arrow, it would get shorter. So the hairpins get longer and shorter. It works for the same with notes. If I choose this stem here for this chord, I can do the same. I can extend these notes along the rhythm grid, so they're extended by an 8th note, and again, and I can shorten them with exactly the same shortcut, so it's really useful. Same with slurs. If I choose this slur, I can shorten a slur, and I can lengthen a slur with exactly the same shortcut. So if you were thinking, how on earth do I remember these? Alt is your move key. If you do Alt or Option with the arrow keys, you can move a note. So I can get this note. In fact, let's take this note. If I do Alt, I can move it up and down. Alt left and right would also move notes left and right if you wanted to, so you can move their position in the bar. If you do Alt Shift, it will lengthen or shorten things. So Alt Shift left and right will shorten this note or lengthen this note. So if I make the note shorter, I can move it with Alt left and right. If I make the note longer, then it's a very flexible system. But it means it works for all sorts of things. So those same shortcuts, Alt Shift, will lengthen and shorten all sorts of things. Anyway, shut up, carry on what you're doing. So now we're going to say, I've done that one in bar 5, good. And it tells you about those. So there's useful tips in here if you don't remember all of those shortcuts. In bar 21, select the bar rest on the top staff. In bar 21, here we go. So now what we're going to do is enter hairpins at the same time as notes. So like we did with slurs, we're now going to do it with dynamics as well. So here's another option. Shift N to start note input. If chord input is active, press Q to stop it. So I've done that. Press 5 to select 8th notes. Press the space to advance by 1/8 note, and press F to input an F. There we go. If you've not already input the phrase in bars 19 and 20, it might be in the wrong octave, so you might want to check that. But otherwise, you should be where I am here. Now enter, now it says here in point 13, so we're on page 29, point 13, press the hairpin, so it's Shift, comma. You can't see it yet because there's no notes. They're not yet visible. Now press G, A, B, C, D, and E. And it will input the corresponding pitches, and you now have a hairpin. It would also extend if you just press the spacebar. So anything to extend the hairpin, but entering notes will do that. Now it says press question mark. So basically, if you look on your keyboard, it's Shift/ on the right hand side, and that will stop the hairpin. I'm now still entering notes, so I can press 6 to enter the quarter notes, crotchets. I can press F twice to enter those 2 pitches, and then press return to stop note input. So you've now added immediate and gradual dynamics to existing notes, and you've input gradual dynamics alongside inputting notes. So there's all sorts of options. Also, for those people who like them occasionally, there's a panel over here on the right hand side. You can enter your dynamics from here as well. Click on one of these, click where you want it to go on the score, or select something on the score, then click one of those. That's where the dynamic will be entered. Adding articulations. So you want to add articulations to just a few notes. So for example, this one here, and then it says use Control or Command to choose this note here as well. And then also the notes in bar 18, this one here. So I'm still holding down Command, and bar 20. Now press, it says you can see tiny little thing here. It says press that tiny little button. So basically you're looking at your speech marks and articulation things. So on my keyboard here, to the left of Enter, on my UK English kind of American style keyboard, these 4 buttons here. So they've got square brackets on them. They've got slash or hash, depending on whether you're on Windows or PC. Sorry, Windows or Mac. And if you scroll over these here, look, it tells you, hover over these buttons here, then it tells you what the shortcuts are for those. So these 4 buttons here correspond to the 4 buttons to the left of Enter. If it's a non-UK keyboard you're using, or non-US keyboard, and they're not in exactly those places, then you can either remap them, or you might find some other useful keys that are in those positions that you want them to be. But that's what they're designed to be. And in the Edit Preferences option in Key Commands, you can change all of these if you want to. And just for completeness, these ones underneath these 4 is Shift and the same key. So if you want one of those, you can use the same keys with Shift. Anyway, we want to enter marcato. So that's the one on the bottom left here. So that I've entered marcato for all those 4 bits because I'd selected them all at the same time. So for staccato, staccato is the top right of those 4. So it says command click the quarter note Fs on beat bar 6, beat 3. And this one here in bar 8, and also in bar 22, this one here. And then if I click the staccato dot button, top right, then I'll get those. Now, this one says, now, you've input notes and articulations at the same time if you want to. So in bar 21, which is here, what we're going to do is select from this rest here, and we're going to shift select to here, and now we're going to option or alt click here. So this is going to copy these, so we've got all of these same notes. And the reason being that on this last beat here, the reason we haven't copied this one is just to show you that if you then do Shift-N, start the caret, you can select staccato first. So I've pressed the staccato, the right angle bracket, and if I press F, then I'll get a staccato F. And articulations are sticky, so now it's on for note input. If I entered more notes, then they are sticky and they would stay on. I'll delete that because I don't want it, but they would stay on. So if you want to turn them off, you just press the same button again and you will turn them off. So now you've seen you can enter them as you're going, or you can do it, just later with edits by clicking on a note and then choosing that button. Now we want some tenutos later on. So when you've been using left and right arrows, you've been moving along the rhythm grid like this. If you hold down Command or Control and press the right arrow, it'll jump in bars. So now it says go to bar 39, but you don't have to go all the way to bar 39, because if you press the down arrow, you can get to bar 39 here as well. So now you want, tenutos on this one. So choose the tenuto button, which is a slash on my Mac, and is probably a hash on Windows, and then press D, F, B, and you'll get those 3. And then for the left hand down here, it says if you go press the down arrow, I'm going to press Command left to jump back a bar, and then I want a G natural. Do you remember naturals? Yes, it's 0. And then press G, F, E. Because I've still got tenutos turned on, they've still got tenutos. So press Escape or Return to stop note input, and we've now added articulations to existing notes and input notes with articulations as we go in. Adding arpeggio signs to chords. So we're now on page 32. So in bar 9, we want an arpeggio. So here's one way of doing it. I'm going to click on the stem here. Actually, for arpeggios, you can just click on one note. It says that here as well. You can just click on one note if you want, but if you click on the stem, it selects the whole thing on the chord. Press Shift-O. O is for the ornaments popover. It looks very similar to this button over here. So Shift-O to open the ornaments popover and type ARP, A-R-P. And that will give you an arpeggio. The reason it looks similar to this button over here is because they also exist in here if you want to click them in with a mouse. Then it says press return, close the popover, and it enters an arpeggio. Now repeat the steps for the chords in bars 11, 13, and 14. However, if you've got one selected, you can also use Alt or Option and Alt click them with copy basically to there, there, and there. So that is another way of doing it. Once you've got one in there, you can alt-click them. Then it says, where do we want to be? I need to go back a bit. In bar 26. In bar 26, here we go. We would need to start note input. Then it says if chord input is not active, press Q. Unless you're using a MIDI keyboard, press Shift O. So now what we're going to do is enter an arpeggio as we're entering the chord. So ARP. Now you can't see it because there's no notes. It's similar to the dynamics and slurs earlier. You don't know, just believe us, it will happen. Press A to get an A flat, and you'll see underneath this little plus there's a tiny little bit of an arpeggio. It's starting. It's just being born. It's going to get there. Then it says on my Mac Control E, and then it says Control A to enter the other bits of the chord. There's the Windows shortcuts are in there as well. So now you can see the arpeggio line there is there as well. Press Enter or Return to stop note input. You've now entered arpeggios as you've been writing music. So as I said at the beginning, there's often a couple of different ways of doing this. So you choose the method that you like. Personally, I quite like adding arpeggios after, but then that's also if I'm copying something that's already there, then that's the way I work. I kind of put all the notes in and then go through the articulations and everything else. Some people don't like working that way. They want to put the things in as they go. So now you can do both. Adding tempo marks. So in bar 11, select anything on beat 2. So it could be this one, could be this one. Doesn't matter. I'll choose this one. And then it says the tempo marks are system objects. So it doesn't really matter which bit you're clicking on. It's going to apply to everything in this system. And if it was other instruments here as well, then they would get them as well. Command or control click on the beat 3 in bar 12. So basically the end of this bit here. So it doesn't matter if I've done this one and this one because it's a system object. Press Shift T for the tempo popover and then enter Poco Rit. And if you like the dot, put a dot. And then press Return and you get Poco Rit dot. And then a dotted continuation line which shows you it's going to go up to bar 13 here. Now it says in bar 13, select any of the notes or the rest on beat 1. I'll have the rest then. And press Shift T to open the popover, and then enter a tempo, and you choose this a tempo option and press Enter, or just press Return twice if you want to. So you've got Poco Rit lined up neatly with a tempo. This is actually another reason why this would quite happily work in Dorico SE, because Dorico is doing all the positioning for you. As we entered some of the dynamics earlier, staves moved apart slightly. It's doing those positioning things for you in many, many cases. So now we've added a gradual tempo change, and we want to, and an absolute tempo change. So you've got a gradual tempo change, Poco Rit, and a absolute tempo change of a tempo. And Dorico's lining them up. You can also do these. There is a panel over here on the right-hand side. How many times have I said that today? And you can enter them from here, should you want to. And there's a tap tempo and various other things, should you want to use them. After completing this task, use the same tempo popover at the beginning. Select this rest here. Do Shift T and enter the grazioso, which is on the PDF if you're looking at that one. As you start typing, you see you get an option here. If you choose this option and press Enter, then you will get a quarter note equals 108. It said in the popover, it said Q, and you can delete that from the popover if you want to. But if you have entered it and you want to change this, then when it's selected, at the bottom down here, you've got the Properties panel. This first button here is the Properties panel. This whole panel is also operated with Command or Control 8. Though 6, Command Control 6 is the top one, 7 is the one on the left, 8 is the one at the bottom, 9 is the one on the right if you like shortcuts. If you like all these shortcuts, by the way, have a look on the blog as well on that resources page. There's a quick reference card which lists all of these shortcuts. So if you want a kind of just one, here's all of the shortcuts file, you can get that as well from dorico.com/resources. Anyway, in this lower panel, in this properties panel, you can untick metronome mark shown. So if you don't want that or you don't want the text shown, it's still 108 BPM. But it's just not showing you that at that point. So now you have a couple of options, and it says Dorico aligns the grazioso tempo mark with the time signature automatically. Not dragging anything, we're not moving anything, it's just doing that automatically. Adding clef changes. There's just a couple more bits I think that's worth doing today, and then I think that will be a nice suitable lesson for getting started today. So it says in bar 28, so I'm just scrolling around, I'll find bar 28. Select the rest on the top staff. Press Shift N, start note input, or one of the other options. If chord input is not active, press Q. It is. Press F, C, F. There we go. There's the chord. Press the space to advance the caret. Press Shift C. This is a new one. Press Shift C is the clefs and octave lines that we'll use in a minute. And then in the popover, you can type bass, and then it gives you a bass clef. So you can also, in here, if you want to, instead of bass, you can type F. So G for G clef, treble clef, F for a bass clef, if you want to think that way. It's also slightly less things to type if you want to use it that way. So now we've got a bass clef. So continue inputting notes and chords on the top staff until the end of bar 29. So just for speed today, let me find the right one, bar 28. I'll use my MIDI keyboard for a second. So let's remember to turn chord mode off. We're entering the notes now, and I'll just use a MIDI keyboard for a second. So it means I want quavers at this point. I should have thought about this before. There we go. And so I've entered those notes, and I've entered them all in the wrong octave. This isn't in the in the thing. And apologies to Lily for making a mess of this. Now I'm going to select with Shift, select these notes, and I'm going to just move them down an octave. There's a useful extra bit of lesson, I suppose. So now what I want to do is restart my caret line here. I want to be about here, and I want to use the lower voice, so I'm going to just use V to switch that, and I'm going to enter those notes which are here. Oh, except my keyboard's still in the wrong octave, so I'll, yes, think about that and move it. Think about the choices I make. So now we've entered that. So now it says once you've got to the end of bar 29, and it tells you how to do the flat accidentals if you're using a QWERTY keyboard. In bar 30, with the rest selected at the top, press Shift C, and you can then enter treble, or as I said, you can enter G as well if you want to. So you now have a G clef as well. So now we've entered a couple of clef changes here. Now you probably notice that we've got some extra rests here. So to delete the rests, I'm going to press Enter to turn my caret line off, except I can't. And here's a case why you can't. So in this particular case, I'll just press Escape. Because this clef is selected, pressing Enter is editing that clef. So here's a case where pressing Escape actually is the best option for turning off that caret line. Now I want to remove the rests, so I'm going to select this bar, and because I want all the rests in this bar to be deleted, I can just select the whole bar, I can go Edit, and I can do Remove Rests. You can do it on an individual selected rest, or any selection, it will just remove all the rests. I've liked this a lot, so I created my own shortcut for it. There isn't one by default, but you can create one in the Preferences Key Commands section if you want it. So now the rests are removed. What it's actually doing, it says here, is using the starts and ends voice property. So if you want to look into more details about what it's actually doing and that kind of thing, there are details should you want them. Tuplets. Now this actually, I don't think I've done this before in any of our previous sessions. So when you've got the caret on and you're entering tuplets, what I normally do is select the note value first. I'm not going to do that this time. In the guide it says, if chord input is active, press Q. It's not. Now you press the tuplet button, which is semicolon. There is also, on the left-hand side, there is a tuplet button, and in Dorico 4 now you can long press on that, so press and hold, and you get some tuplet options. But let's look at this popover and some of the clever things you can do in this. So I'm going to enter 5:4, and then press X. Why X? Well, you can also do things like Q for quarter note, as we saw with the tempo earlier, and you can do E for 8th note, and X is for 16th notes. So this is 5 16th notes in the time of 4. So I'm going to press Enter, or Return, and now I've got this. Now I can enter the notes into here, and I want to enter some 16th notes, so I'm going to press 4, so that 16th notes is selected over here, and now I can enter these notes. So you want to say F, D, which gives you the D flat, and then it tells you here I'm going to use the Control G, then I'm going to use the Shift Option D, and I'm going to enter F, or you can use a MIDI keyboard, of course. Tuplets are sticky in Dorico, so now as tuplets are on, if I enter any other note, it would continue with the tuplets. And we're going to use that in a minute, but not yet. So I'm going to press Undo to remove that. To stop the tuplets, you can either click the tuplet button on the left-hand side, or you can press Shift and the same button you used. So I did use to turn tuplets on, semicolon. I'm now using colon to turn it off. It's the same as Shift S, stops a slur, and Shift / stops the gradual dynamic. Now I'm going to press 6 and I'm going to press B, C, enter the other two notes. And then it says repeat steps 4 to 11 for bar 31. Or, tip, turn off note input, select these. Now, what you want to do is command select this treble clef because you don't want to repeat that. Press R to get this down here and then press Command Alt up just to get those repeated without entering all the notes again. Now for repeated or consecutive tuplets, in bar 40, so scroll along to bar 40 and do the same, open the tuplet popover with semicolon and press 3:2E. So this time, oh, I'm on the wrong staff. It's the lower staff I want. Sorry. Tuplets 3:2E because this time I want eighth notes. So now I'm going to be entering eighth notes down here. It says now press 5, so I can actually enter some eighth notes. Press A, and I'll get the A flat in there. And because it's in the wrong octave, then we actually want to press this a couple of times just to put it in the right octave. Now enter the other notes, and if you're following this one, then you want to do this, and then you want to say A, C, E, A. So now, as I just kept typing notes, the tuplets are sticky, they've stayed on. So now type shift semicolon, colon, to turn it off, press shift C to open the clefs and octaves popover, type treble, or G, press return to close the popover, and then press 6 for quarter notes, and then press C. And that's the last one. So that's here, as you can see. This is, why we're now on page 40, because Lily's brilliant and put all of these all of these screenshots in so that we can see what's going on. So we'd now input two different types of tuplets and an additional clef change, and in a later task we can change the stem directions if we want to in bars 30 to 31. We won't do that today, but if you continue in this guide, it will do that. So a couple of last things we want to do, and adding a grace note. This is a quick one. In bar 32 over here, we want to add a chord at this point here. So just for speed, I'll use my MIDI keyboard. So there's a chord. It tells you how to do it here as well. Now we want to input a grace note. So it says press / to enter a grace note. So on my keyboard, on mine in the bottom right corner, to the left of shift, is a /. And also, you can see here, it's lit up the button there, so you can press that button if you want to. So now I want to choose 5 for the eighth notes. I want to press B for a B flat. And in this particular case, we actually want it to be up here. So we have a very high B flat. And now I want to stop the grace note input. So a bit like with articulations, you use the same button. So I just press that / button and it will turn them off. And now if I enter something else, so if we do the same here, it says 7 to enter half notes. And then you want to enter a C, an E, and an A, like this. Except I did it wrong because I didn't have chord mode turned on. Oh dear. So I'll press turn chord mode on because I was using my MIDI keyboard. I've tripped myself up. So if this is where you want to, maybe stick to one or other of the options because then you don't have to trip yourself up with chord mode. So with chord mode on, there we go, we have the chord. Now, it's a bit high. So what we're going to do now is add an octave line to this. So I've got this note selected. I'm going to shift select this one here. I'm going to press shift C for the clefs because it's also clefs and octave lines. I'm going to type 8VA and into the octave line, which you can see starts here, ends actually at the beginning of the beat here, but it's just affecting these notes here. So now we have this. You can also enter these from, again, you can use these panels on the right hand side should you want to. So now it says to input the music in bars 33 to 35. And the reason for this is we're going to look at very quickly some cross-staff beaming options. So we're going to enter note input, stop the chord input because we don't want chords at this point, enter tuplets, 3 in the time of 2, X, 4, press D for the D flat, and move it down 2 octaves. You can use a MIDI keyboard for this if you want to do it that way as well. But if you're following along here, then you can look for all of the things in bold, and you can type exactly what it says. And you can enter all the corresponding pitches, then 6, A, and then Q to start chord input. Oh, I pressed W by accident and jumped into the part. Apologies for that. I should look down when I'm pressing buttons. Press Q to start chord input. and then input a D flat. So we're going to do this, and then we want to do 0E, and we want to do 0G and 0A. So we've got a load of naturals in here as well. And then we're going to press the up arrow to move to the staff above. So I'm still in note input, but you can just move that. And now I'm going to enter with with an articulation. We're then going to enter a note in the upper staff up here. Now I can stop note input. So basically it should look like this, which it does. Select everything in bar 33. So I'll use Shift and press R twice for the next 2 bars. Well, that was easy. And then we want to do Edit Remove Rest. So select everything in all of these bars and use the same function we did before, which was Remove Rests. So they've gone. Now crossing the notes to the other staff, that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to choose, it says in bar 35, so that's the last one we did here, choose this top one here, and you're just going to press Option N or Alt N. And that's going to move it to the staff above. It also exists in a menu in Paste Special. It's Move to Staff Above, which is a very useful one. So it's Move, as I said earlier, Alt or Option is our Move key. So N is Move to Staff Above. M for Mother is Move to Staff Below. So it's merged with the top one. And this says if you're using Dorico 3.5, then you need to re-put the marcato articulation. Actually, we don't need to do that in Dorico 4 because we've changed that, we fixed it. In bar 33, select the second D flat here, and then shift click the chord. And what we're going to do now is press N. So we used Alt N a minute ago to move. Now we're just going to do cross the staff above, which is N. So they're actually still in the lower staff, but they've crossed, and the beam is crossed here. And then it says, I think we want to do the same. Yes, repeat for the next 2 bars. So from here, shift to here, N. And from here, shift to here, N. And then it says we want to respell notes. So if you choose the notes in bar 33, this one here, and 34, this one here, with command, then you can use, now you remember we had the natural sharp flat, but if you want to respell something, then you use them with Alt. It's a move key. So Alt and equals will respell them in an upwards direction, so we get a double flat. And if I choose this one here, and I use Alt and minus, then it will respell them in a downwards direction, so I get a sharp. So then you get this exactly as you wanted it. So it's got all of the details in here if you want to look at respelling and those kind of things. Have a play. Double sharps, triple sharps, and double flats and things. Yep, they're all fine. If you want to add the text indications for left and right hands, then you can choose a note. So where are we? We're in bar 30 here. And what you want to do is use Shift X for text. It will tell you the details. What you want to do is do italics. You want to type L.H. It's doing it this way because this piece was originally German. And either to close this dialogue, because if you press Enter now, it will just give you another line because you can add line breaks in here. So press Command or Control, or press Escape. Sorry, Command or Control Return to do this like this, or you can do the same, but with this one we want right hand. We also want this to be in italics, and you can just press Escape and it will leave that editor. It will also say in here for the left hand one, what you want to do is press F to flip it below the staff. And then if you select both of these with command, you can just click over here, alt click over here, and you can copy them. Make sure you clicked in the staff, not the note head. So you click on the staff, alt click, and it will copy those over there. So now we have the left and right hand indications. Let's add the repeat region, and I think we're just about done. So in bar 39, we can select here, and then it says anything. Click on anything at the end of here, this note here, this rest. So shift click and it will extend that selection. Press Shift R to open the repeats popover and type end. And we get an repeat ending. It's added the first and second time repeats. It's added the repeat bar line. I've got wings on mine only because my Dorico preferences in the engraving rules has wings turned on by default because I've changed that ages ago. It probably doesn't for you. If you're in Dorico Pro, you can change that if you want to. But don't worry, in this piece, actually, their example doesn't have that. They want to extend this second time bar line, so you choose this one here, It's the same shortcut we had before. So Shift-Alt-Right will extend that on a bar. And using the properties panel at the bottom for this second time on here, you can say the end of the line is closed, which will give you this closed little line at the end here. So that's a good little option at the end to do that. Then it says if you want to, you can now finish writing the music. So we've now kind of got to the end of this this section, I think. I mean, we're now, I said this was a 100-page guide, but we're now 52 pages in. So really, I think this has given you a really good grasp of how things work, but also more than one way of doing things, so that you can now choose the best option that suits your workflow of how you want to do this. If this has been useful, and if you would like to, in a future session, let's do the laying out and formatting of pages. Let's do some of the other bits. So there's laying out, formatting of pages, looking at how we do some of those, how you do some of the playback type things, how you do the printing, exporting, both the PDF and an MP3 file. If you would like to, we can look at all of those in another video as well. And then on page 86, I think, there's also some other notation things. So let's just skip forward a long way. If it would be useful in a future session, page 86, I think, from memory, printing and exporting, don't fail me now for the notation, page 86. So adding lyrics, we could do that in the other blues piece if you'd like. Adding fermatas, adding mute playing techniques, adding chord symbols, adding rhythm slashes. These are all things that if they were useful, I'd be very happy to do that in a future session for you. We do these Discover Dorico sessions once a month, so we could very easily do that if that would be useful. But in the meantime, if you're really chomping at the bit now, you can download this PDF, you can go through all of this, and as you can see, it's got all of the screenshots and everything that you need to complete this project. So what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to do a Blue Peter, here's one I made earlier. I'm going to open the other file that you would get when you download the First Steps PDF of this project, which is the completed version. Now, it doesn't have the formatting in, so the idea is, if we do another session, this is the one we'd start with, or you will have, you would have got this far, entered all of the music, and then you would look at kind of formatting it to fit on less pages and that kind of thing, should you want to. But if you just want to hear what it sounds like, you can open this project, go to the play mode and the play menu, and then go to Playback Template, and make sure for your version of Dorico, SE, Elements or Pro, you've selected the playback template. The file when you first open it, because in the guide, if you're following the guide through, it will tell you how to do this. In the play section, it will tell you how to load a playback template. When you press Apply and Close, Dorico will then load into the VST rack any of the instruments it needs. Only a piano in this case. If it's a full score, it would load all of the other instruments it needs. So it does all of that in the background using the playback template, and as I said, the guide tells you how to do this. And then you can just press play and see how it sounds. So I'll press play, I'll just have a quick look in the chat, see if there's anything that I've missed or got even more wrong today. I will say, just in case it's helpful, after pressing play already, if you press F3, then there's a little mixer that you can load in Dorico, but you can also use the panel at the bottom, so Command 8, and there's we were in the properties section here. If you click on this one, which is the mixer faders, you can turn up any of the instruments. So for this live stream in particular, and it's only a solo piano, I can turn up, in fact it's behind my head, isn't it? The master is over here on the right, and then any of the other instruments have their own fader here. So if you want to turn any of them up, then you can do. as it's just got to the repeat, and I've been reading some of the comments. Oh, sorry, I need to. I disappeared then. So, just from some of the comments, the move to staff above and below shortcut N and M. Somebody said they always remember north when they want to move something, cross staff north, or if they want to move it to the staff above, N for north. I'd never thought of it like that. That's a very good point. Thank you. So what was some of the other things? The LH and RH for the left and right hand. Yes, I did them each time as changing them to italics and that kind of thing. It would be if you're going to be doing a lot of these, yes, you can add your own text items with specific sizes, italics, fonts, and all those kind of things. And you can even set your own shortcut for them. So you've got one shortcut to a specific formatted bit of text that you need to use every time. This was a simple option of just showing you how you would change the Dorico default for a couple of small examples. But yes, you can do those with shortcuts as well. Also, there was a question about, can you do this in any version of Dorico? And yes, everything we've done here, you could do in any version. You can do it in Dorico SE, Elements, or Pro. That's no problem. There was also a question about doing things on the iPad. There's no reason why you can't do all of this stuff on an iPad. How you do it might depend on whether you're using just the screen or you're using a keyboard. A QWERTY keyboard, because you can attach a Bluetooth keyboard to the iPad version of Dorico. But yes, all of this is basically exactly the same on the iPad, but maybe I should redo this as an iPad version at some point. If that would be useful, then let me know. What was I think there was another question somewhere. Somebody's just asked, could we do a first steps guide for iPad? Okay, I'll see what we can do. Maybe that would be a useful option as well. And if you are using the iPad version, the latest iPad version that's just come out also has Open in Place, which wasn't available before. So if you have a Dorico file in Dropbox, for example, you can open it on your Mac, and you close it on the Mac and open it on the iPad. It's exactly the same file. Whereas previously, Dorico on the iPad copied it into its own folder, and you used that. But now you can open it from the Dropbox or the OneDrive or the Google Docs location. What's the other one? iCloud. You can open it from the iCloud location and use that same file. So that's even more useful in the latest iPad update. So I think that kind of answered a lot of the questions. Thank you, Lily, for being online and answering those. If you're reading the live chat, then Lily's been great answering some of those, as well as putting this guide together. I mean, it is a really good guide. This one piece encapsulates so many things that you want to do, and even the fact that it says things like don't forget to turn off chord input if you're doing this bit, and don't forget to do this. It's a great way of doing it. So thank you, Lily, for putting this together, and hopefully this just highlights it. And as I said, once you've done it yourself, share this video with somebody else and say, hey, if you want to give Dorico a go, you can download the free version, Dorico SE. You can get a trial if you want for Dorico Pro. You can go through this and it will teach you all the things you need to know. Yes, it's different to other notation programs because we've really put a lot of thought into how the shortcuts work. If you've never used the notation program before, they're so intuitive to learn. One key like Alt or Option, that's your move key, and this same function to lengthen or shorten something also works for other things. And it's a very intuitive way of working. So hopefully that's a useful intro to you. And if there's other things that would be useful to continue this first steps guide or some other things, then please let me know. As I said, we did an entering a symphony and entering large orchestral works in last month, and there's also some ideas for maybe doing a jazz big band type style one at some point as well. But if there's other useful things that would be useful in a session, then please let me know. So I think that's probably it for today. You can skip through it if it was a bit of a long session. I'll now put time links underneath the video so that you can skip through this if you need to. Thank you if you did join us live. And even if you didn't, I hope this session has been really useful to you. Please get in touch if you've got any other questions. Our support team are always there. You can find them online. You can find us in the forum. You can find us on Facebook. And you can email us on discoverdorico@steinberg.de. And yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. So click on that, there's little subscribe options on the bell to be notified when we do other videos in future. And you may now notice when you open Dorico as well, you'll find out in the Learn tab if there's a new video in there. You'll get a little notification to tell you if there's a new video that you can watch on our channel as well. So I hope you'll come back and see us in another video. Tell us what you think would be useful next. And thank you for joining us. I think I'll read the chat now in case there's anything else at the end of the session. And thank you for joining us. See you next time.